Blasphemy.
Freebird. Coming to you now quite live from Pinda Studios. Betty Records production. I'm Sascha Saintevic. With me is Briano Hawk. Just as a reminder, the Saints of Blasphemy podcast is a weekly podcast that uploads every Sunday. We are available on iTunes, SoundCloud, I think now Stitcher as well. We also put the video version up on YouTube if you want to check us out there.
It's also on the website.
It's also on the website, saintsofblasphemy.com. All one word, no space. Briano, what's up? I skipped the greeting earlier on just in order to throw all of that in.
Yeah.
Before I forget, just to make it easier for people, because the amount of new listeners coming into the show that are wondering exactly when am I to expect new episodes coming out. So I figure we might as well give them what our schedule is or what our planned schedule is. It's Sundays.
Yeah.
Okay, so we delayed this topic in order to get into a more serious conversation last week regarding depression and suicide, which I thought was a very good episode. Got a positive response on that. Because people always, I guess, like to hear serious conversations thrown in every once in a while. This one is not going to be quite as serious. We're going to be talking, although I have some serious things to say about it, some music documentaries. And a lot of what I say will probably be able to cross over some issues that I have with documentaries in general. But just focusing on music documentaries because I categorize them into two distinct groups when I talk about it. Now, the first one is the obvious one that a lot of people are familiar with. It's sort of the promotional one that bands and record labels put out. Sort of like behind the tour, see the behind the scenes footage that goes in. You have interviews with the band, interviews with people around the band, the fans. It's really an infomercial that they put out. Yeah. And you can get it as a package with the album. You can get it, the band themselves usually sell that stuff, or the labels do. So that's fine. I actually don't have an issue with that. A lot of people might be like, well, that right there is just a giant ass commercial and you don't get what's real. But that's to be expected. You're gonna promote your stuff. And if you have any sort of image, if you have an artist, if you have talent to promote, you're gonna put out things that are relatively positive. You're not gonna have like a long 1 hour, for like behind the scenes cynical view of what is this band really like, what are they all about, are they money grubbers or anything else. You're going to put out, you're going to put them in the best image. So I'm totally cool with that.
Yeah. The
issue that I have is the second kind of documentary, the one that's supposed to come from a totally unbiased source, or a third party. And everybody always comes, when movie makers always come in with their own predispositions, with their own prejudices, with their own biases to any sort of work that they do. That just has, otherwise it's going to be a boring documentary. The issue that I have is when they don't present, they try to, they act like they're neutral, but then what they present isn't neutral at all. Like what they present is clearly also another one of those infomercial type things because you don't hear anything. Now, I do like some music documentaries, like I like The Artifact, the one that chronicled, 30 Seconds to Mars and the struggle with EMI, because I feel like I learned something from that. And even if I already knew, all this stuff about how labels can negatively impact the artist in the sort of album making process, it's not so much it's nice to know that they're putting out something in a coherent way that's going to educate the public on the topic. And I think it did a good job of doing that. And now, of course, you can say well, it's one-sided, you don't get the record label's opinion on that. Well, objective doesn't mean you have to present, each side gets 30 minutes and then by the end of it, we're like, oh, gee, it's a draw. Objective simply means these are the facts. And if the facts favor one side over the other, well, that's too bad. Like climate change. If the facts favor that climate change is happening, too bad. And it's not objective to say, okay, well, maybe it is, maybe it's not. Same thing with record labels. Are there ways in which they screw over talents by getting them to sign contracts that are detrimental to them as far as losing their image and losing the rights to the art that they put out there? Yes, and these are the way that they do. Dude, there's a lot of good that they do, but in this aspect, they don't. And the Artifact did a good job of that. But then you'll get other documentaries where I don't feel educated by them, And I kind of so like it didn't really go anywhere in order to tell me anything, and the whole thing seems like a giant fluff piece for them. Now I know we've mentioned it before. You know which one I'm going to mention?
Yeah.
Animal, the story of Animal, which I know you have some opinions on too. So I mean, do you just want to take it away from what I talked about? You don't have to start with Animal right away. Just what do you take? Like, do you think?
I don't know. I think music documentaries and documentaries in general can be one of the hardest things to do because, as you're saying, you try to do unbiased opinion and things like that. And sometimes you go into it unbiased and you don't have an opinion. You just want to, present it as a story of let's see where it goes, and it ends up being to more of a one-sided thing, using your bias against it or for it, things like that. I mean, it's documentaries or music documentaries and stuff are, just difficult to do in general. Like you mentioned Anvil, the story of Anvil, whatever.
The name sounds like a parody.
It starts off, which you're thinking something, it's a good thing or whatever. It starts off with famous musicians Slash and other people, talking about him and saying,
Ian Scott,
it was because of Anvil we got into this, and it sounded like they're having backing, and by the end of it, it goes nowhere, and you're like, well, what the hell was the beginning? It's like, well, it's supposed to be their comeback tour, and it leads nowhere. So some people would think, oh, well, this is the hour plus wasted in my life that I'm not going to get back. So, so it's documentaries can do that. And then you can get like the other one you mentioned to where you think it's a documentary about 30 Seconds to Mars, and it ends up being a documentary talking about the struggle that they have with the music industry. It doesn't just talk about them and EMI. It also talks about all the other aspects of Spotify having issues, which goes into Napster and goes into so many other things. So I mean, yeah, that's a good documentary, but that was because it was, I don't know if they intended to go with the one aspect or just 30 Seconds to Mars and then it went from there and they just followed the story, or if they wanted to do that whole thing and try to keep it as music related and non-biased as possible.
Well, it's probably a combination because it has famous people on there. Jared Leto is famous, his band is famous, and so like if they, with all the name recognition and all the influence that they would have with labels, with producers, with like the higher ups, because they would want to keep them happy because they're celebrities. If they're having a struggle, how bad do you think that bands who are no-name bands, so just getting into this business, like they really have no leverage whatsoever?
Yeah.
So like all the bullshit that you see 30 Seconds to Mars go through, you're like, I guarantee you, they actually sort of end up coming to terms with them in the end. So it's, they have a lawyer and all that goes back for. If you're like just some punk garage band that's just coming through and you found some label that wants to represent you, there's a negotiation. Yeah. This is a contract. You sign it. You don't sign it. You get nothing. Bye. Yeah. You're on your own. But that's
not all documentaries are about trying to get a record label.
I know. I'm just saying like in those terms, as far as like what they were trying to do.
Just to make that comment because of the fact that that's all we've talked about so far. Try to hit the labels or. Talking about the labels. I mean, there's so many different documentaries out there about so many different things.
A lot of them are biographical.
And so, there's some really good ones. There's some really, really bad ones. So I just, like I said, just trying to, in general, make the topic.
Do you think
though? It's not just about the one thing.
Do I? I mean, no. I was answering to your question as far as like, why do you think that they focus just on this and just that? I thought the reason why they did that, it was a good vehicle to take something that you're familiar with and then branch it out to the topic. That's the only thing I
know. I'm just saying.
But as far as like documentaries go in general, or music documentaries, do you think that they've been like there is clearly demand for them? Like fans want to see, even if it's just like the infomercial that the label puts out, like this is our tour 2017 tour. I mean, fans eat that up. They love that sort of stuff. We love that sort of stuff. We watch it. So, do you think that it creates some sort of like a insider look first? It's a satisfied voyeurism on our part. We just like to see them eat the Cheerios.
Yeah,
on the
well,
tour
I mean,
bus.
I think music documentaries is, there's so many different ways of it being done already. I mean, if you look at, like the one you talked about, Artifact or whatever, and Anvil, they're talking about bands who are either made it, trying to make it, has-beens who are never actually anything, things like that. And then you have, biographical, picks that are like Amy Winehouse, documentary about, her life, and she's dead now, things like that. You have the Kurt and Courtney, you have the Kurt Cobain thing, Bleached and Beyond, whatever, all those different ones just on one subject.
Right, and those are like the...
And people really,
behind
see those
scenes,
behind the
true
scenes,
story.
trying to see, what's happening, things like that. I mean, it's, a really hot topic for people in a sense, when it's something like a good group that you want to see or you want to have more information on, things like that. Like, there's a documentary which I haven't seen yet, but I want to see it, which is about Bob Marley. It's just called Marley, which I heard is actually really, really good.
It's probably a lot easier to have like sort of an objective presentation of someone like Marley or Hendrix or Elvis and like that.
Yeah.
They're not like like you're talking about a historical figure at this point.
Yeah, same thing as like the David Bowie and stuff.
Exactly. Like it's different when you do about an artist that's still here.
Yeah.
Especially one that can sue you for slander and libel and defamation.
Yeah.
And also one that you might still want access to if you are in the business itself. Like when you're doing, like I know that every single documentary that True Hollywood Story comes up with, Or VH1s when they used to do like the behind the music. Unless the star has fallen so far off from grace, it's going to be a fluff piece because they still want access to them. They don't want if it's somebody that's still up top. Because I mean, they had a documentary when Paris Hilton made a CD. Yes, many of you don't remember this. Paris Hilton had an album come out like a decade ago that they were still kind of trying to promote it. Like the True Hollywood Story came out there and chronicle her life, and they made it seem like she overcame all this great adversity in life. But in reality, I mean, she lived on the most privileged existence ever. I mean, she's an heiress to a multi-million-dollar company. That, whatever trials and tribulations she went through pales in comparison to what the average person goes through. Now, nothing against her. I'm just saying she's a socialite.
Yeah. I mean, but I see.
I was saying
things
like
like that.
I don't
wouldn't
take it
really,
seriously.
consider a documentary. It's just a fluff piece. Everything pretty much that E has put together as like themselves doing it, and not something that they're putting on through someone else actually doing it. I think are more fluff pieces than anything. It's
it's a promotional tool.
We want to get you the inside of them and give you a little history on them, but we're not going to go down and dirty on them or anything. Really, I mean, you're going to say a couple of bad things in a sense.
You'll acknowledge it, but then you'll immediately have somebody come in, and
at the end of it, it's going to be like, they've done so much, and we're happy that they're doing what they're doing.
They'll acknowledge the controversy, but then it's immediately going to be minimized.
Yeah,
because that's what their job is.
Yeah,
and of course, and part of the reason is because that's how they got that sort of footage. But as far as footage though goes, I think these documentaries are going to become a lot easier to make as the years go on. And there's a specific reason I think that. Because look at something like you have a documentary on Bob Marley, and you're trying to make it, whatever, straight footage of it. I mean, we're talking about things that are like 4 or 5 decades, 6 decades in the past. Not that much footage exists. A lot of it is like still images. A lot of it is actually, you rely on the witness testimony in a way.
Yeah, well, in home videos that, only the families
right, but there's only so many of those that have survived.
Yeah.
Now, someone like Amy Winehouse, I mean, she died recently and she was in her late 20s when she died.
Yeah.
But because she's a millennial, and our lives for a lot of us, not maybe not us specific, but for a lot of millennials, your life is chronicled. I mean, most people had a MySpace in the early 2000s, then they had a Facebook, Instagram. Many people have YouTube channels where they just upload, simple things about themselves, especially people who are more, musically inclined, artistically inclined. They want to share it even at the age of 12, 13, hoping to get discovered. So her whole life was chronicled even before she was famous.
Yeah.
That's why they had such an abundance of footage that they could string it all together, even though she didn't, unfortunately, tragically, she didn't live a full life.
Yeah.
So I think as it goes on and as all our lives are sort of, at least on the internet, like it's sort of like a set and chronicle there, it's sort of like forever saved. People who do become famous, people that we want to make documentaries on, that are newsworthy.
But I mean,
it's gonna be easier to piece it all, make a good chronology.
Yeah, but I mean, things like
at least
that.
visually.
It's. I mean, you have to be a good storyteller, no matter
Well,
what.
right, you got to make it an interesting
when
way.
you're trying to make a documentary on an artist or someone, an artist who's passed or whatever. You have to be a pretty good storyteller to do that. Then there's documentaries that are just talking about certain styles of instruments or whatever, and just kind of shows how douchebaggy some people were. Like that documentary I watched a couple days ago. It was just talking about the Sydney Opera House or the Sydney String Quartet or whatever, and it was basically them talking about their $4 or $5 million instruments that they're made from famous people like Stradivarius and whatever. And I mean, those it's cool to be able to play, and I think they're privileged to do it. But they're also sitting there, it's like, oh well, you have to let the instrument play you. You don't play the instrument. Blah 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 blah. And then they go to some douchebags in like New York who are in like $8,000 suits, and they're sitting there. Oh no. Music is just about the business. It's an image. It's not the music. You're supposed to sell yourself. And it was like, why the hell even put that into the documentary just because they're playing?
Put that in there.
And it's not like there was a quick clip. They're actually sitting there doing the whole thing.
Yeah,
the whole family walking around being douchebags. And their whole thing is they're playing, $15,000, $20,000 or $1 million instruments. And they're like, oh yes, well we can play, but it's not about the music. It's about the image. We're trying to put Stradivarius wood in all these different things and make speakers with it, and it's almost like, so you're not even promoting the music. You're not promoting, the vitality or the history of the instrument that you have. It's just an image to you. It's just a business thing. So why the hell even have it? Why even do anything about it into the documentary? Things like that, So it's like nowadays, I mean, you can literally just like, oh, well, I'm just going to make a documentary about something and see where it goes. And it sometimes turns out okay, but half of the time it's crap. I mean, I think it's sad that people are going to use that as we'll have a story to tell and I'm going to try to do this, but I'm not going to I'm just going to find whoever I can get on. It's like, no, you keep to your story. We're talking about, the Sydney String Quartet. It should be about the Sydney String Quartet, not the Sydney String Quartet who play, the violin and stuff, or really ancient stuff, a small history about it, and then go to some douchebags talking about it. It's more about business than it is about, the music, and, you have to have bankers to get the instruments and all this other junk. It's like, no, they're in New York. They have nothing to do with the Sydney String Quartet. Talk about the Sydney String Quartet. So it's stuff like that. It's like kind of, to me, was like, what the hell? Why is this even on there?
It's off-putting.
Yeah, I don't know.
The thing is, a lot of times that's sort of a narrative tool. The documentaries like to do. They'll center in on a handful of either individuals or a handful of events.
Yeah.
And they use that sort of to drive the vehicle. And often, depending on who you center on, that sort of also influences what the mood is going to be, what the tone is going to be, and who you're going to sympathize with.
Yeah.
So like if it focuses on the music itself, a lot of times people get lost because they can't, like you can appreciate the music, but you don't personify or identify with it as much as you do with an actual face, an individual, or like you can't antagonize it the way you can someone who comes across sounding really pretentious and douchey. Like we all know that a lot of times for a lot of musicians, whichever genre they're in, it's about the money.
Yeah,
like a lot of general. Like if they could choose between just making great music, and making no money, and making like mediocre music and making a decent amount of money, they'll go with where the catch is. I mean, a lot of us would. I'm not putting myself above that.
Yeah, no,
but it's just a lot of them would never say it out loud.
Yeah, no,
the way
that's the thing. Is
and that's what
they're going to
hits
try
you.
to promote. Yeah, it's more about the music, things like that. And I mean, just going to that in a sense, talking about another documentary I did watch again a couple days ago, which is about a Japanese group who they said themselves they're more about theatrics and theater than they are about the music.
A lot of J-pop
and it was they're doing punk music. That's the thing. It's punk is not about image. It's about just putting chaos out there. And they would do punk style or playing or whatever, but they had a whole show and image stuff, and they all had a character they're playing, things like that. And it's a band I've personally never heard of. I'm like, well, why the hell are they even making a documentary about these guys? Trying to get them heard or
well, I mean, you might not have heard of them, but
I'm sure they're an underground scene thing, and there's from what I saw, they're every show they had a crowd, 40, 50, 100 people. I really don't know, but there was a crowd, so it's not like 3 people standing in a crowd like Anvil showed. They're just kind of jumping, rocking back and forth, not really knowing what to do because it's a band that they don't know at all. And they're like, oh, what the hell?
We've mentioned Animal now several times in the documentary. I'm going to be very specific about what irked me about that documentary. You can take any band that sort of ran with the beginning of any sort of group of music or genre. Let's say heavy metal when it was just really hitting the scenes in the early 80s. And you can make them seem like... And I know Animal was there since the late 70s, but I'm talking about when they hit the scene. So calm down, all you fact checkers out there. You could take any band like that sort of had the promotions with these names with like whatever the bands that were just becoming recognizable. You could say, oh, they were on stage with so and so, therefore they deserve the acclaim. Here's the thing: some fall, some rise. A lot of it is luck, a lot of it is marketing, a lot of it is simply the audience demand. The way it's shot, it's making it seem like something, and like clearly, obviously, this has been a grave injustice in the history of music.
Yeah.
It's trying to pull on my heartstrings. These guys have struggled. These guys have fallen behind. These guys, and it's to no fault of their own. They mentioned like, oh, they were too far north. They're Canadian. Oh, the music, they're still trying to stay true to the music, whereas a lot of the other ones change. So, because they don't want to sell out. Oh, they're trying to relate more to the true fans as opposed to trying to get new fans. Okay. All of that to me sounds like, number one, you're making excuses. Number two, you're trying to explain away and rationalize what actually happened. They didn't hit the scenes. They weren't marketable. They didn't capture the imagination. The music did not stand out. And I've listened to it. They play it repeatedly.
Yeah.
It didn't stand out from anything else that was being played. And I don't care if you can get Lars Ulrich, you can get Ian Scott, you can get, all of the names you can recognize from that same era saying how great they were and how much they influenced them.
Yeah, but anything Lars Ulrich backs, is not going to be good. Come on. It's Lars Ulrich, a dumbass in a dumbass band, Metallica, who sucks like crazy.
Never trust the Danish.
And they're backing Anvil, and they're like, oh,
they don't. No,
I
but
learned
see,
myself
this is the part.
from him.
This is the part that
yeah,
irritates
that's why
me
you
as well.
suck, Lars.
No. This is the part.
Yeah, I'm talking straight to you, Lars. You suck.
They don't give two shits about Animal. They just appeared in the damn documentary.
Yeah.
They don't give two shits, and that's the thing that annoys me most of all. They'll get these people who I guess sort of fall into the genre of any of these kind of documentaries, and then they'll be like, they'll amp it up, they'll hype it up, and I can tell they're trying to promote it.
Yeah.
They're trying to sell this to me as opposed to giving me their opinion. And that's the thing that annoys me. And I know if you ask them, like, no, it's my true opinion. Yeah, okay, this is the first I've ever heard you talk about this band.
Yeah.
I don't remember you selling in the sellout crowd going, I owe this to Anvil, who inspired me. No, you don't. No, you didn't. You don't give a shit about them. Now someone's making a nostalgia fluff piece and you're like, okay, let's go with it. Okay, so that's the thing. That's why we keep referencing them. Like, if people who are getting irritated listening, they're like, what do you hate about it? I just stated exactly what annoyed me about it.
Yeah.
And I don't like it when people are trying to manipulate me emotionally in that way, undeservingly. It's the same thing when I say like a Superman's death and Batman vs Superman. you're like, well, he died. Isn't that a dramatic moment? No, you did not earn that death.
Yeah.
Not to nerd out too much. You did not earn that. That same thing with the Animal, the story of Animal. The name sounds like such a satirical mockumentary, by the way.
Yeah.
Why not like Metal on Metal, the story of Animal? That would make much more sense. It's like, being like a Hendrix, the story of Hendrix. Like, dude just sounds fake.
I mean, that's the thing. It was, I think, they tried their best to, show that the band was.
It was supposed to be a big comeback, and that seems to be the main thing.
I think that the documentary, the person who did it, tried their best to say, hey, these guys have been passionate about their music. They're trying to do, stay true to their roots all these years. They're still pushing for it. They had it, a shot at being big, but it just didn't work out for them. And the thing is, I mean, most musicians.
Yeah, you could pick any one of them.
There's
so many of them fall into that.
Are in the same thing. Bands, the same way. Oh, yeah, we were doing this. We're doing so good. We thought we were going to get a label, and then blah. But that's the thing. There's only a small percentage. As much as people hear music and think, oh, well, it's so easy to get in. There's only a small percentage of people who actually do it. And then those who work their ass off and fail miserably. Or spend their whole life trying to make it big. And then next thing you know, you're like 40 with like 3 kids, and you're like, well, I guess I have to get a real job. But I just keep trying to do my music stuff because that's what I'm passionate about. After your 30s, you're probably never going to make it to anything big unless you get super lucky.
And we say that as failed musicians ourselves. We're just not living in a fantasy land.
Yeah.
But the thing is, like, I can contrast, so people would say, like, well, all the things they're shitting on in this particular documentary, that's just part of the way it's, that's just part of the way these documentaries are put together. So you can't say, like, you like some documentaries and you hate this one specifically because it seems to be you have more grudge against the subject, which is this band. Okay, well, I can pick a band that I have, I didn't have any prior like love for or even much knowledge about, like the documentary they had about the proto-punk band Death, which is also a band that didn't hit stardom, fell into oblivion, and one of them died. The other one, went to more of a gospel song and then died in the 80s. One of them worked as a janitor at the time the documentary was released, but it's just the way they shot it. And this is where you see like talent. Like I mentioned earlier in this podcast, I was like, it's going to be easier to make these documentaries. What I really meant was it's going to be easier. You're going to have an abundance of footage to choose from.
Yeah.
How it's put together, strung together in actual finished product is going to depend very much, like you said, on the talent of
the storyteller,
the storyteller, of the team that's actually doing it.
Yeah.
And it relies so much on somebody who actually knows how to put these things together and sort of make it in the same way that a good book is constructed.
Yeah.
You got an introduction to it. And sometimes you can be experimental with it. You can just, go back and forth between the times, like a past, present, future. And it was like, wow, that's an interesting way, the way it flows. Other times it looks chaotic and like you're not going anywhere. The documentary on Death, I think did a really good job because I don't think it tried to hit me. It didn't try to manipulate me emotionally. It simply mentioned this was a band. And this band had a sound that at the time was more or less unknown. It was really like deep underground. And and then they played it, and so that's why, like, whatever, it came out in 1973. Like, this is like, even I think earlier than that. Like, and it sounded like things that came out, in the years leading up to the 1980s afterwards. Yeah. Now, a lot of the bands that did the music label might not have known about this Detroit band called Death. So I can't conclusively say they influenced or they owe it to them, but I can say that they were ahead of their times. Yeah. And the documentary didn't try to tell me that this is the band that influenced the Ramones. This is the band that made it possible for the Sex Pistols, in the UK to hit the airwaves. No, it simply said they hit a sound that was ahead of their time. Yeah. It didn't work out for them. And now, now people are rediscovering it. And like people are looking back at it. And I think that works much better to me than trying to present a band that didn't make it and then try to make me like some grave injustice has been committed here because all of this, everything has sprung forth since in some small way. owes its
yeah,
existence to them. And like they had this major influence they didn't have, which is where I put Animal. Death, I'm not going to say they created punk music, but they clearly were part of that early punk sound that may have, might have sparked an influence in somebody that heard them at the time.
Yeah. So, I mean,
I think that's just the difference. There's a more subtle approach that makes a documentary much more powerful than if you try to beat me over the head with something. Yeah. Especially if it's a message that I'm likely to contest. I can disagree with the message that a documentary comes out with. I can disagree with a message that anybody comes out with. But I can still walk away saying it was presented in a way that I think is digestible. Whereas, like, if you present it in a way where I'm repulsed by it even more so, not just because I disagree with it, but even if I was to agree with the message, like if it's put in a way in which I feel it's manipulative, I'm just naturally gonna turn it off. Like there was that one that, and a lot of times it really depends on the personalities putting it together. Because I remember that one documentary we watched on Tupac and Biggie. I think it's still on Netflix. That British guy.
Yeah, it is.
I think his name is Daniel something or another. Someone's going to know it. Which actually good. It has good reviews from critics. Audience reviews are lower, slightly than the. So like the audience wasn't too pleased, but it's just number one, he inserts himself too much in. Number two, he's in no way relatable to anybody watching this documentary.
Yeah,
like not even slightly, not even a little bit. There's no way I in any way believe that he thought that he's like deeply interested in the subject. I think he was just going through the headlines and he thought, these two rappers died. There was a whole East Coast, West Coast thing. Let me discover it. Let me bring my giant ass boom mic, my fanny pack, and I'll walk through, to the streets of New York.
Yeah.
Like in no way did I find anything he did in any way authentic or relatable. Apparently the critics disagree with me. They disagree with me like crazy. But again, it's just presentation does count in these things. Presentation and storytelling. And I think a lot of people who set out to make documentaries, and this is why sort of film students love to do documentaries, because they feel like, well, just pick a subject, let me put it out there, and I'll string all these things together, and it does have to work for me, and that's why a lot of these suck. Yeah, and a lot of rockumentaries.
Yeah, like I said, documentaries and music documentaries or rockumentaries or any of that stuff, they're hard as hell to do. As easy as people may think they are. It's like, oh, well, all you had to do is point your camera and say, okay, do it. Ask some questions, do this, whatever. You'll probably do 100+ hours of recording alone. And you'll only put out an hour and a half, 2 hours if you're lucky, movie or documentary. Sometimes 100 hours of filming and you only put out 45 minutes of good footage because you're trying to put a story together through your whole thing, because you're like, oh well, this is my topic, this is what I want to do, and then in the middle of it turns left on you and you're like, well, what the hell? So let me try to follow this one along, and then it curves again and you're trying to chase it all down. So as you're trying to put the footage together, you're changing your story. So documentaries are super hard to do in that sense. Like I said, you have to be a really good storyteller. You have to stick to your subject, to your topic.
Right. But you can't be too rigid with it, because you have to be flexible.
It gets very hard to do that when, like, talking about the Biggie and Tupac thing, that guy is just kind of all over the place. I don't think he's a good documentary maker. He's too much. He's putting himself in there. You hear him talking. He's asking stupid questions. Like when a guy says, hey, this is a very rare one. It's probably worth $3-4 million. And the guy's like, oh, can I get a copy of that?
No, let's go into detail what happened. He met up with somebody who claims to be been a friend with Tupac in the early days before he was famous, and to have an authentic mixtape of like him rapping like way back, like early 90s, 99. And he says like, it's one of a kind, is this or that, and this schmuck is like, oh really? I can't really hear it out here. Can I get a copy of that? Like, that's not, he just said it was worth millions. Why would you even ask that? Like,
and the guy being smart enough, he was like, no. But like,
what's the point? I don't know if that was meant to be funny or just clueless.
He's clueless. Like I said, he's not a good documentary.
Which makes you think he's stupid. Which makes you think like his whole opinion.
Like I was going to go into, just in documentaries in a sense, not just music and stuff. We actually sat down and watched 3 different documentaries from some guy who you don't think would be a good documentary maker. He looks like a meathead. He's a lifter, whatever. And the one thing is all about the steroids. And he's perfect.
I want to give him credit, so I'm going to look up his name
he's
while
a
you keep talking.
great storyteller because he does the whole thing. You're into it, and he actually, he's in there the whole time, which is rare for someone to do that and make it a good documentary. So he does that. What was it? It was about the steroids. It was about drugs.
His name is real quick. His name is Christopher Bell.
Yeah.
So Trophy Kids was one of them, which was really good. I actually thought Trophy Kids.
Trophy Kids he wasn't in very much.
I thought it was his best because you see him a little, but it wasn't like personal, like the ones about steroids, and drug addictions and things like that. Because that was like also it dealt like with his brothers and it dealt like with himself.
Yeah. Like, well, one was a professional wrestler and whatever.
Yeah, because that's what his brother.
Whatever. But I mean, you see him, and you're like, oh well, he probably is not going to be good at his documentary.
Because the guy looks like,
and he tells he's a perfect storyteller because those are some good documentaries. I didn't expect it from them.
Yeah, even like he combines the 2 different styles. Which I'm like, Trophy Kids is more like standard. He's removed from it. He just lets you see these parents, and he, the way they push the kids, and he shows the kids, and he shows how much it means without really. I know he has a lot of involvement from behind the scenes, but it doesn't seem like he's that involved there. Yeah. Whereas the documentary on steroids, he's like front and center in it, but it's still engaging because you still see the wider scope of the story that he's trying to put together. And it's a fun, and again, that a lot of that is the personality base. He's probably just he's a good communicator. Yeah. Christopher Bell, giving him a plug, even though he's not paying us anything, but maybe he could.
But I mean, you have to give him props because I mean, those are some good documentaries.
And these aren't even like topics that I'm like fully like. I'm not an athlete. Like my parents didn't push me into sports. They didn't give a shit whether I played basketball. But I could still find some level of engagement in the subject, even though I had no like personal interest. It's not like I want to be like, I remember being 15 trying to go out for the basketball team.
But I think what it was is the reason why we saw at least all the ones that we know of that he did is because we saw the first one and we were like, hey, that's actually pretty good. Mm-hmm. Oh, let's see if there's other ones the same way, and it was same thing. And so we ended up watching all of them that I know that he did. There's 3 of them. He may have more. I just haven't seen them. And we're like, well, I'm engaged in his. Mm-hmm. His process because of the fact that he's a good storyteller. I had another one on my head a minute ago. Another one, which I mean, it's just another documentary kind of thing, which was Super Size Me, which I think the guy wrote a good story. Mm-hmm. As you've said multiple times, it hasn't been backed up scientifically since.
It's a good documentary. That's the thing.
It is good. He tells a good story. It's a whole thing.
The way it's put together, it's engaging. It's convincing. Yeah. Like I remember the first time I watched it, I'm like, well, totally, I'm on board with this. Yeah. The problem is and this is endemic to science documentaries. So documentaries that sort of fall into the realm of science. To use my educational background. What the thesis you present has to be repeatable in some ways. No one's been able to repeat this. Yeah. The data that he collected. In fact, when attempted to, there was a professor who went on an all McDonald's diet and he had his students put together a healthier nutritional choice. And not just the salad. He had Big Macs. He had the, whatever, the shakes, the ice cream and all that. But it was put in a more balanced way. And he lost like 5 to 10 pounds in that 1 month. Yeah. So it wasn't, and that's part of the problem. But you don't, and that's the thing. Like when the documentary ends, when the credit roll, you don't there is no follow up on it unless they can make a sequel to it. Yeah. But that's the problem. And like every genre will have its own issues. Like any sort of thing that goes in like science, health related, public health related, will have that problem just being verifiable and falsifiable. Falsifiability is a big thing in science. What factors need to be in to disprove this? Now, music documentaries, I'm starting to think that, and I'm going to get your opinion on this. We were talking about the removing yourself from it, bringing it as close to objectivity as you can. The thing is, though, I feel like any sort of documentary where an entertainer, like a musician, is the subject matter, because a lot of thing central to the entertainment business is presenting yourself and marketing yourself to others. Anytime you make this subject your centerpiece, and the subject being the musician here, it will either come out as a hit piece or it will come out as an infomercial. Whether you mean the two or not. And that just might be part of it. Because it's either going to be like all negative, these guys suck, these guys are awful. Very few of those. I mean, like there actually are not that many documentaries that like really try to hit on somebody. They were not professionally made ones anyway.
Talking about documentaries that are infomercials. You know, Jake the Snake, Return of Jake the Snake. Best infomercial documentary I've ever seen.
Not for Jake the Snake, but for Diamond Dallas Page's yoga, DDP yoga. Not your mama's yoga.
Yeah, not your mama's yoga. Yeah. That is the longest
infomercial
ever. But from what you see, it works. That's a good documentary. I just have to say
see the follow-up studies.
Yeah.
They'll have to like reform every single drug addicted wrestler, and let's see if it fixes Jeff Hardy's problems.
Yeah. But anyways.
But I'm like, do you think though, when it comes to like when an entertainer is your centerpiece, because naturally you're there to continue, you're there to promote yourself, you're there to sell yourself, market yourself.
Yeah.
You know, good or bad, whatever your shtick happens to be. And is it just sort of natural for it to become as a promotional tool? For you, whatever the filmmaker's intention is, that's just the footage.
Here's the thing. I like documentaries about people who have died.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
It's easier to be
as weird as that sounds. Because I thought the documentary on David Bowie was a good documentary. Talks about his life, his beginning, his childhood, how it went all the way through and everything. And it ended with his death and his actual latest album that he had out, which he died like the day or 3 days before it actually came out or something like that. There's something, kind of creepy about it. But I thought it was a good documentary. It's not just though, talking about David Bowie and him just interviewing and being, whatever. It was actually, they did everything in there and they put it in there, told his life story and friends and family and things like that. And they, gave you their thoughts on it and what they know of him. Going back to Anvil, they were in it the whole time. The people are trying to talk to him doing a documentary, and they're talking about the past. That's all they're talking about. Oh yeah, we remember back we were playing here in Japan, and this and this, and they're just talking and talking. And it's like, okay, well, other than the brief synopsis, is starting it off with them playing in Japan, and you end it with them playing in Japan. It's a big sad story, and you're like, well, after all this, you expect something good, and it's like, what the hell?
Yeah, and they still haven't made it big. It's not like they made a big comeback. It's not like anyone's within the community, it's not like within the hard rock community, it's not like anyone's like, whoa. Yeah, I'm really glad Animals.
But I mean, there's tons of documentaries of what just the artists who are alive and they're doing their thing, and they're you're following them around their daily chores or whatever they're doing, and it's boring as hell. Because you see, there's like, oh, well, they're musicians, you can do this. And they're like sitting on the couch, hanging with their children, or they're yelling at somebody, or they're doing whatever. And it's like, how much footage did you cut out, to try to make this more interesting? How much the stuff did the musicians like say, yeah, stop filming, with arguments and stuff like that. Because watching the one I saw the other day about the J-pop band or whatever, the dude's having an argument with one of his ex-band members, and he like kind of hits him and headbutts him. And then he turns to the camera and is like, well, don't put that in. I'll, make a whole, draw the scene, and we'll do a thing. And he's trying to make a story out of it. So you don't see a true them, And a lot of the times documentaries who are following artists, they're going to they're not going to show you the truth, like,
what's on
the hearts and the, stuff, cutting room floor stuff. They're going to be like, oh no, we're trying to make a good image of them, kind of this and that. It's, they do show you some of their bad sides and whatever, but it's still not completely truthful.
It's presented more in a way, in a dramatic, theatrical way, where you still sort of feel like you're still on their side. So they're arguing with, whatever. They're trying to get the plane tickets, so they're arguing with the person at the airport. It's so presented in a way where, like, okay, well, somehow somebody at the airport must have screwed up.
Yeah, yeah.
And like, and you know, there was some weird scene that's like dramatically put in where in any everyday life it was to happen like to us, like the cabbie didn't show up, and then you're on the phone with the cab company. Okay, hey, the cab didn't show up. Could you send me another cab, please? Okay, sure. It gets resolved like within a couple. On any of these, it always like then the music hits.
Yeah.
And everything gets low, and then all of a sudden it's like, what do you mean there is no fucking cab? Like, God, we need to get to this setting. Like, it's shit that can get resolved so easily.
Yeah.
And then again, that's another thing that will piss me off. They will take normal routine things that any adult has learned how to deal with, inconveniences, but I don't know, maybe celebrities and musicians just never learn how to deal with the shit, so they blow up. Although they have, it's not even always like them on camera, it's like their managers and stuff who should know how to deal with these inconveniences and have backup plans. But I feel like that's put in for camera because otherwise it would be boring as shit.
Yeah.
And then they go to a montage of them putting together the stage.
Yeah. So the thing is, I mean, just in general, talking about documentaries, I actually lean towards documentaries that are more non-cinematic, more follow, the truth in a sense. Because you'll watch the documentaries on the music things and stuff like that, and, they see the artist come in and sit down. It's a setup scene. You're not watching them guerrilla style where you're following them into the cab or into the bus or the whatever.
Right, the cameraman has to be in the
they're
cab.
In there, they're setting up the shot. It's like, oh, wait for this, wait for the crowd to go by, this and that, And it's like, yeah, you're doing more cinematics than you are actually trying to do a documentary and tell a story. That shot has nothing to do with your story. Don't worry about it. Sit down in interviews, talk with the artist, follow them around, go to a couple shows, be in the backstage with them, how it is to be on stage, what they actually feel about the things like that, Those, I think, would make a, more decent documentary than, okay, wait, let me get in the bus and let me set up the scene, get the lights all ready. Now come in, you can throw a hissy fit. All right, go. It's like, you can tell these scenes are just set up, and there's like, well, no, we need to make some sort of drama, some sort of whatever,
just to make it more interesting.
Whatever, yeah.
It's like a movie. There's this climactic thing that happens.
But I mean, there are some documentaries where you hear screaming, yelling, this and that, and it's behind doors, or you see people throwing stuff at each other, and the camera kind of just turns on. It's just boom, it's there. It's because it was like, oh, it's happening. Hold on, get the camera. Let's go. And the dude's yelling at the cameraman to get the hell out of there and this and whatever. And they're actually standing their ground. It's like, nope, it's on camera. It's everything we're showing you.
And that's usually once they have like a clip at the beginning that says like so and so started arguing because they missed the beginning.
Yeah. They'll do something like that or whatever. You'll catch some of the different clips, and those aren't set up. I mean, those I think are what documentary, what people who are trying to do the documentaries are waiting for. They want to get, not in the sense they want to see drama, but you don't want to set up your shots, I think. And that's what I personally like. When I see a shot set up and I'm watching a documentary, even if it's a good one, and you see is the whole setup and the thing and the lights or the perfect lighting, it's just the scenery is too perfect. It kind of pulls me out of it. It's like, man, you were doing so good with your storytelling, and then you give me that. I don't want to watch a movie. I want to see a documentary. So like the one we were talking about earlier, with 30 Seconds to Mars. I think a lot of those shots, like where he's sitting down and he's on the phone, things like that, he probably was actually sitting out there and just trying to think. But some of those shots were set up.
Oh, totally.
And it's just the lights are too perfect, the scenes or whatever. But Jared Leto's used to it. He's an actor. He's like, okay, just sit there.
First of all, he knows how to play camera. My favorite shots in that movie were actually the education ones that we're talking about, like the way record contracts work. Yeah, the ones that almost all the scenes that Jared Leto was in, there was always a part of me that was like, nothing against him. It was just part of me. It was like, is he acting for the camera? Yeah. Like just because
it more of the interviews.
And again, it could be just because I see him as an actor more than I do as a musician, which might not be fair for him, but that's just how it is.
Yeah, that's something I should clarify as well, because I mean, there's set up shots to where you're doing interviews and things. Yes, that's fine. You're having an interview. You're not going to be like, okay, no, we're going to do a panning shot and a walk in this and it's like, no, you're sitting down. You have the lights on them. You're like, ask them a question. You edit yourself out of it, and they answer your question. That's I kind of like those. Not where you hear the person who's doing the documentary talking to them. It's like, oh, you ask them a question, and then they're like, oh, reply. No, you just they just talk, and you edit it and it makes it sound like they're just doing their thing.
I can't think of an instance where it would be ideal. Like if they throw them a question out of nowhere, like let's say they're talking about something, like something involving the last show that they did, and then something happened in there, and all of a sudden they'll say like, oh, what about the incident that sort of like threw you off? And then like if the person being interviewed sort of has like a moment where they pause and reflect on it. Okay, it would be awkward if they edited out that question and the person is just like looking, staring at the camera, confused. Like incidences like that sort of throw you off the loop. It doesn't feed into whatever scene was before that, whatever voiceover was before that. That I can understand. I mean, I agree with you largely. It's just I could see those exceptions that come in.
Yeah.
Now let me. Now we're gonna have to finish off on this point. And how do you feel about people say like something like "This is Spinal Tap," which is a mockumentary? It's like one of the most honest documentaries about it, just because it is it's over the top because it does all this. But all the other legit rockumentaries, do the same formula, and they did it like in the early 1980s.
Yeah,
like before the music documentaries were like they of course they existed, but again it was mostly like promotional items, for the Beatles or for Elvis or for things like that. But this is like one is like behind the scenes with the musicians, and it was like so over the top.
Yeah.
But a lot of the same sort of. I know he's making fun of it, of course, and he exaggerated it. But a lot of it continued to be used, even the things that were clearly being made fun of, like the interviews where the band sort of ramble on, or they try to promote and they try to spin things that are clearly negatives that happen to them into positive, where they try to make themselves seem more intellectual than they actually are. And that's sort of like one thing that I know is a lot of things like all musicians want to seem like, at least the ones who do rock genre, they want to seem like they have something deeper to say than what the songs actually are. So if Warren made a documentary about cherry pie, they'll try to tell you that it's actually, I wouldn't be surprised if they try to make like, cherry pie is actually a reflection about the deeper economic conditions that society is going through with the current bakery industry as the asymptotes to a much more productive structure on the market level. Like, of course, that would be bullshit, but I wouldn't be shocked if they did stuff like that. So I think that This is Spinal Tap did a good job of these artists who, you're theatrically showy, you're sort of a sideshow attraction for like your music, especially like when they get all flashy and they get all gimmicky.
Yeah.
But they try to present it as something much more artistically revered, something that's like much higher up. So what's your opinion on mockumentaries in general, or just This is Spinal Tap?
I haven't seen This is Spinal Tap. I've seen a couple things in here and there on it. So
dude, we're gonna have to watch it. I don't
really have an opinion on that one. I mean, I've heard tons of people say stuff about it, and it sounds like it's a funny movie, but I don't know.
We'll watch it. I've got it. We'll watch it.
Mockumentaries, it's a cinematic thing, so it's not really a documentary to me. It's just supposed to be funny.
But how do you just feel about people saying like that the mocking makes it more honest than the ones that are?
Well, that's the thing.
Because they can say stuff that's over the top.
Yeah, but that's the thing is, mockumentaries, yes, they're trying to make it as big and grandiose, and it's cinematic, so it's not really a documentary to me or anything. It's sit there with the script, and it's supposed to be funny, and it's supposed to be different things. Mockumentaries, that's what they're called. That's why they're that way.
Yeah, they're mocking.
They're good entertainment, but other than that, it's set to a good like This is Spinal Tap. I'm assuming it's done well, making it seem like a documentary because everyone talks about it.
Yeah.
You don't hear about other ones that are mockumentaries that are not that good.
There are people who think Spinal Tap is a real band.
Yeah.
I have met them. They actually think it's a real band, and they thought this was a documentary about them, and they thought these are actors. These are clearly actors. And like Fran Drescher is in the movie.
Yeah.
We're crying out loud. The Nanny is in this movie.
Yeah.
And the thing though is, I think there's a lot more freedom doing something like this because the band doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Because these events aren't actually happening. You can make it over top, and you can make it presented in a way that's just goofy, but in a way it also seems surprisingly authentic in a way.
Just like Together.
We have Together, one of the great classics in MTV films.
Yeah.
Together was sort of this fake boy band documentary, mockumentary that they put together that sort of made fun of Backstreet Boys and NSYNC and all that. Which
all
actually,
the boy band stuff.
yeah, surprisingly. Now, here's the thing though. You do learn something from that. Because, I mean, even stuff that you like already knew, but they like presented it like in a funny way, but in a comical way, but like in a way that like clearly points out to you. All these bands are like mass produced. They always have 5 members who something close, like 5 members, and they all have like these personality traits that they have to stick to that are marketed for them. And then when you start thinking about it, you start thinking about all those boy bands, you're like, hey, wait a second, yeah, these things actually do all come in like this one size fits all mass-produced, marketed way.
Yeah.
And I know this came like at the tail end of boy bands. That's why MTV could sort of get away with it, because boy bands were dying out. So they didn't have to, they didn't make this in 1996.
Yeah,
they made it in like 2000.
Yeah. Where it was ending.
It was okay to make fun of them. Like it didn't hurt the main profits.
Yeah.
But yes, I think that there's satire has a place in entertainment. And I think mockumentaries fall into that as well as any other satirical piece. Often they can reveal more truths about a subject than real things, or I should say real life presentations of things, simply because you can make it over the top and you can disguise it under the label of humor. And you can get away with it because you can always tell people, well, lighten up, it's just a joke, even if there's some fundamental truth in it.
Yeah, but there's also, going back to documentaries, there are very bad documentaries that seem like a mockumentary like Anvil.
The title alone is so stupid.
It threw me off. The thing is, I can't say it's a bad documentary. I mean, they tried their best with the subject matter. They told a story, things like that. But it works best if it's a mockumentary because of the fact that it has all those things of band that was supposed to be successful and didn't make it. Mm-hmm. They have all these
Spinal Tap.
It's all
Spinal Tap for real.
Like I said, I personally haven't seen this is Spinal Tap, but it probably is, from what I've heard, pretty close to that movie. So if you see it, you think, oh, this is fake. It's just like, no, this is an actual band. They actually existed. They did all this stuff, and it just didn't work for them.
Here's the thing though, if Spinal Tap was a real band and that was a real documentary, it wouldn't be funny to me, it would be sad. And that's how I felt at the end of Animal. Yeah. I'm like, this is sad, it's kind of pathetic, and I feel sad about this. And I don't want to make fun of them, and I don't want to like insult them and everything like that. I'm just giving my honest opinion about my take from it. Like, if this was a fictional band, I'd probably be laughing my ass off throughout the whole thing.
Yeah.
But because they're real, it makes it sad. And that's part of the thing with documentaries. You should remember, like, it's a double-edged sword. Like because these are real people, you can relate to them easier. But also, because they're real people, like the things everything we've said right now about any of these people, it's probably cuts deeper to anybody else. Yeah. Sort of like either is close to them or relates more to them. And even though we're not trying to be dicks about it, it makes it harder to talk about, and that's why I think a lot of people will just sort of shrug it off, like, it's not my cup of tea, whatever.
Yeah.
And it's like
here's the thing. Also, there are some documentaries that some people like it, some people don't, and it comes down to the subject matter. It comes down to you like the band or you didn't like the band or whatever. But I think there's some out there that are actually well done. Like they tried their best, they did a good story, they did everything, but it ended up not being a good documentary because of the subject matter itself. Again,
it wasn't interesting or it wasn't engaging.
That's the thing, is like they did everything they can, and I mean it's hit or miss in a sense, and there's it's something like you really the topic you're really interested in, but it was just not told in the right light or something, or it was too hard hitting in a sense, like documentaries, any nature film documentary type thing, actual, like not nature film, but actual documentary, like the Food Co. or whatever it is, where they're talking about slaughterhouses. A lot of people are upset about that. Why? Because you're seeing a live animal, you're seeing something with a face, and it goes, and you're like, oh no, this is bad. Da, da, da. But they're telling a good thing about the industry of pretty much, as what do we call them, PETA, which I actually don't like because they're a bunch of idiots. But they have they're in there like, oh well, killing is killing, and whatever, blah blah blah. I was like, yeah, but we're also living longer because of the fact that we do eat the meat and that we do and stuff like that. But the documentary is, very touchy subject in that sense, to where it's hard to say, oh well, this is just linear, see both sides. We don't have an opinion on it. When you go into something like that, you're going to have an opinion. Oh well, meat's slaughtering, eating meat's good or it's bad. Right. And that it's I'm not sure if that one's Food Co or what, but I've seen one. It was a documentary on
Meat Your Meat.
It was that one,
which was narrated by Alec Baldwin.
Yeah,
but Alec Baldwin is like a huge animal rights vegetarian, vegan sort of guy. So he's like, it clearly has a message, and a lot of times the footage you decide to leave in and leave out sets narrative. So of the emotions, look, people are gonna have that. You can be the huge, the biggest carnivore on the planet. If somebody shows you, a bunch of, like little calves getting slaughtered, it's gonna, you're gonna feel it. You're gonna think twice. And that's clearly intentional.
That's the thing is, I mean, in general, there's music documentaries are kind of the same thing. That like it could have been like, it's not a bad documentary, but it could have been told differently, or it could have
you can use the
something
exact
else.
Same footage, and you can piece it together differently.
Yeah, and it would have a better story. It'd be more welcomed in a sense, and just in general. I mean, I know there's way too many documentaries out there to actually name it.
Right, I mean, we wouldn't be able to fit it all into one show.
Yeah, but I'd like to say, it was just in a sense, when it comes down to documentaries, in my opinion, there's a final thought in a sense. When it comes down to documentaries or music documentaries or rockumentaries, any of that, a final thought comes to how good of a storyteller are you? Because if you're not very good at it, people aren't going to like it. Mm-hmm. You could do the exact same thing, have someone else do that documentary, and it'll probably be more accepted. Say you have, the story of Anvil, whoever the hell did that. Like I said, it wasn't bad. I mean, it had good storyline. But if you get someone who's like, bigger name like Spielberg or something, I don't know why he would do it, but Spielberg would probably give you a whole different spin on that, and you'd be like, oh yeah, you get some famous name out there.
Abrams would give you a whole different spin.
Way too many flares.
Just never.
But
seen.
That's it's ridiculous to think one of them really big famous people would be
but
doing a documentary.
Let's say somebody more seasoned in the documentary.
Yeah. But I mean, they would give you a different thing on it, and you would have a different lie, you'd have a different story, you'd have a different feel in a sense, or an ideal of that documentary. To put any music documentary out there and stick someone who's really good at it, I am curious to see if there's any more that the what's the name, the one we mentioned earlier,
Christopher Bell.
Yeah, Christopher Bell put any more out there, and I would be really interested in seeing if he did something in a music one. Because I know everything he's done, it's really good.
Somehow
it's something he actually has passion in. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I don't think he's really a music guy, but he may be able to, he knows the story thing. He knows how to tell a good story. He may be able to actually put it out there pretty well.
Well, well, we're putting it out there. Somebody, whoever's can get in touch with him, will be rating. Yeah. Well, we pitch it first, though. I want the royalties for anything else that he produces. If he produces the great comeback documentary for Flocks of Seagulls, I want to know. Okay, and I want a piece of those royalties. All 16.
No.
Cents.
We need to get him for the documentary of Saints of Blasphemy.
Oh yeah, that would be Yes, that would be very engaging for people. They could just listen to the episodes running for 2 years, but no. Well, it'll be a documentary. It'll be like a different angle from the table, from the peanut desk.
Yeah, you'll see all the behind the scenes, which is not very much. I mean, come on.
Yes. Everything is pretty much up front and center, and I guess we'll wrap it up. But we've had a say on documentaries, and we'll wrap it up. And you can watch us again, front and center, next week on Saints of Blasphemy. You guys have a good day.
All right, guys. See you.